providing various different modes to their Office and Windows products for this reason. And they've done a pretty good job of allowing both dark mode and light mode and gray mode and colorful unicorn mode.
Make your head explode mode. Alright. Well, I wonder if people are having trouble joining because usually we have better remote attendance than this, especially with
Well, and I just copied the same.
Yeah, no, I'm glad we got good in-person attendance. Just
yes.
excuse me. We are streaming. Yes.
I'm more flowing, not streaming. Hey, Dennis.
Howdy.
Good to see you.
Hey, Dan.
I waved at you before, but your back was to me. Yeah. Oh, fine. I see how it is.
Yes.
Is that
And do our thing here.
she'll probably you'll see her in the.
Hopefully she'll join when she can.
Do you have a waiting room, or do they just jump?
They just
pop
join.
in? They
It's
just pop
just
in.
it's not like Zoom where you have to go through all that extra hassle.
Right.
She just has to put the password in.
Excellent.
And she was here before, so.
Okay.
Hello and welcome. Boy, the lighting's because we're doing PBS webinars.
Yeah.
And we have a practice tonight right after this one, so I was getting it all ready.
Okay.
And the lighting's meant to be about where he is. a little bit of fall off there.
Yeah.
But it's a little too bright. Hello, welcome, Sarah. You made it back in.
Hi, Sarah.
Glad you were able to get that to work.
So do you want me to just...
Well, I can play with this here.
Oh.
I think. Oh, it's the wrong camera. I have to change cameras.
We're still getting set up, Sarah, so you're fine. You didn't miss anything important.
Unless it doesn't include that one.
I had to use the mobile in the end because my computer no.
Well, the sound is good.
It's not letting me change that.
Yeah.
So,
Maybe it's because it's in use.
I'll make sure that your question is something we put on at the beginning of our meeting for you, okay, Sarah?
Maybe if you...
Okay.
well, these lightings are at maximum settings because it was
Yeah.
meant for clear back there.
Yeah.
So
Oh, yeah, that's...
just toning it down should
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
help a
good.
little.
especially with two such polished
You won't feel like
gentlemen
you're being
here.
I
interrogated.
resemble that remark.
You won't feel like you're being so interrogated.
Yes.
We're blinding you with our pates.
That's much better.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Although, if you want, I can turn on the overhead light when it comes time to read because
Oh, yeah,
that'll
sure,
be a
I
little
need
dark
that.
for
Can you
that.
see us okay, Sarah?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, you can see what she sees. She sees.
Yep.
You can see
By
what
the
she
seashore?
sees.
By the sea.
Well, welcome. This is the Aya Tolkien Society, our monthly meeting this February 20th, 2021. We're here in the RPG Research Studio here in Spokane, Washington,
USA.
USA, and joining us remotely all the way from Italia.
Buongiorno.
Welcome, Sarah. So glad you could make it. Do you know if anybody else was?
I had not heard. No.
Okay.
So hopefully, I know we did a lot better job this month in promoting it.
Yes, yes.
So we should be able to
And
get.
I'll be watching this chat room here, and that'll have to do. We got the Jitsi chat room, we got that chat room. Let's take it away there, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you, Hawk.
Supreme.
Well,
Supreme Secretary.
yes, indeed, Supreme Secretary. So last month in, one moment here, actually, I've got the wrong minutes up. I'm looking at December. Let me get to the January notes. I was looking at minutes. January. 1 second. Technical difficulties. I know I sent these out.
Yep, you did.
I better go to sent. In Gmail, they cluster it together and.
I have they're on the website.
Okay, I'll just go
Minutes
there.
are on the website.
I'll just go there.
scholars.org.
I'll just use the website. My apologies to everyone. Okay. There we are. Okay, this is the Aya Tolkien Society meeting notes for January 16th, 2021. Hawk introduced our meeting, and we had in attendance Chris, Anthony, Brian, and Hawk. Anthony asked a question about the pronunciation of Bjorn. So we had a really interesting kind of conversation about vowels in the languages of the Free Northmen. What did Tolkien intend here? And so we talked about the diphthong, which I think is the first that I can remember talking about the diphthong in the Tolkien Society. So
No, we did it back at the cafe down in Monmouth.
Oh, okay.
We did a whole thing on this when we were going through the whole Kalevala and everything,
Right.
and we were talking
Right.
about pronunciation. We went
right.
in
So
depth
is
about
it
that.
Bjorn
or
or is
Bjorn?
it Bjorn?
Yeah.
Where the
Bjorn.
two combined.
Bjorn.
Yes.
Beorn.
Yarraborn. Bjorn.
Versus two sounds, right? As in Old English, because in Old English you have Beowulf,
Right.
So
Yeah.
is it meant to be Beorn, or is it Bjorn? And of course, Bjorn in the Scandinavian languages also means bear, so it's understandable.
Yep.
So there's a link on there to Michael Martinez's blog, zenite.org.
And he loves to go into great elaboration explanation.
Exactly.
It's a very helpful tool.
Yeah, so you can look that up. We also talked about the OneRing.net exclusive update on Amazon Prime Lord of the Rings. So we talked about that. We discussed the synopsis, which was kind of the reveal as more like an official synopsis for the series, and trying to decipher kind of maybe what some of the words might refer to. And Chris pitched in, I think, also some interpretations off of who was that? You said there was. Well, anyway, there were some articles on the internet. The OneRing.net had mentioned it, but then there were other. There's quite a bit of chatter out there on what that means. So breaking it down one piece at a time. An era in which great powers were forged. So we discussed if this is probably referring to the rings. We're talking about the Second Age. We looked at the timeline quite in depth. So this is about the year 1500 or 1500s of the Second Age. It could also refer to great powers being, just the fact that you have Sauron and you have the Elven kingdoms. And then that's the next piece where it said in this synopsis, kingdoms rose to glory and fell to ruin. So this is a pretty clear reference to Numenor. But it could also be kingdoms of men that were failing, or it could be the kingdom of Celebrimbor, Eregion or Holland. So that's plural kingdoms. And then, so Numenor, Second Age, 3319 is when you have the fall of Numenor. So this is much later, of course, from when the rings are forged. So the One Ring is forged, I think we said about 1590, somewhere in that neighborhood. So by the year 1600, Second Age, the ring is forged, the One Ring and all that. And now, it's another 1700 years, 17 centuries before the fall of Numenor.
A kingdom that reigned for 1,000 years.
Yes.
More than 1,000 years.
Another quotation was, unlikely heroes were tested. And so we said probably this is referring to new characters that they have made for the series because, of course, they're untested, which is great because that means that no one will have any artistic freedom, which is the whole point, and therefore not changing up characters, making elves and dwarves fall in love, things like that. And let's see.
Mess with the canon.
What else? Oh yes, another one was hope hung by the finest of threads. This is
That is not a very nice thing to do to hope.
No, it is not.
Unless it's an Edward sermon.
Or a textiles factory. Well, we talked about how Linden, the Elven Kingdom, would have fallen. So bad news. The elf rings were taken. I'm not sure what the reference was there, because the elf rings were not recovered by Sauron. So I'm not sure what we were talking about.
Some were taken by, consumed by a dragon, right? That was
the dwarven rings.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I guess the fact that just there's all these catastrophes unfolding. So yes, hope hung by the finest of threads, and so that makes sense. And then the next piece of the synopsis from Amazon was, and the greatest villain that ever flowed from Tolkien's pen threatened to cover all the world in darkness. Now this actually kicked up quite a bit of discussion on
between Morgoth versus
Yes.
Sauron.
Yes.
Wait a minute. Sauron was just a lieutenant.
who's the greatest villain.
He who shall not be... wrong universe.
Get out of here.
Yes. Did Sauron have a nose is my question.
Right.
No, I'm pretty sure it's not referring to Voldemort, right?
Sauron did not have a nose after the fall of Numenor.
Oh, you're right.
He didn't have
Yes.
any body
Anything.
parts. He was but a
Well,
spirit.
isn't it good though that he was manifesting himself as a giant eye rather than a giant nose? That would be.
That would be very Mel Brooks.
Yeah, nose.
I sniff you.
The nose.
Yes. But anyway, the greatest villain. Well, we think it's referring to Sauron, probably, aka Anatar,
Lord of Gifts.
Lord of Gifts.
Yep, he's still in his fair form.
Yes, and it's
Until the fall of Numenor. He's
nice
a
hair
fair
as well.
fellow,
Yes, elvish flowing locks of hair. And probably pretty good at smithing.
Have you seen the? It was a Portuguese artist who did a custom work for when I did the the Fall of Numenor module we published
Yes.
on Other Minds magazine.
Yes.
The pencil artwork she did.
It was very good.
I think that's on Other Minds website.
And then the next piece of it was beginning in a time of relative peace. The series follows an ensemble cast of characters, both familiar and new, as they confront the long-feared re-emergence of evil to Middle Earth. So this is probably referring to. We discussed this. Is it the long peace? Is it the watchful peace? No, those are different time periods. Actually, it was just referring to the peace. So there's like 3 or 4 different times when
pieces.
Yes, the pieces of peace. Because you have a third age long watchful peace, I think, after after the first time when Gandalf goes to Dol Guldur. Anyway, we're in the weeds. That would be a great graphic actually to show, like, here's the timeline,
yeah.
and here's all the different kinds of.
The pieces of peace timeline.
This is called the long piece. This is the watchful piece. This is the peaceful piece.
the mini piece.
The mini piece. And so the piece ends. We think we can be pretty certain about this. The piece that's being referred to ends in Second Age, 1693.
Right, because Sauron openly.
Open war.
Yeah.
Yep. And he goes.
No more, Mr. Nice Guy.
Yes. He then overthrows the Gwaith y Myrdain. He takes the other rings, kills Celebrimbor, and even interestingly enough, Rivendell is formed because the rear guard of Rivendell is trying to come in, rear guard of Elrond's trying to come in to rescue Osten Edil, the city, and they can't because of the armies of Sauron. So they retreat to the north and they found Rivendell. So that's the same time period. And then the last part here is from the darkest depths of the misty mountains to the majestic forests of the elf capital of Lindon, to the breathtaking island kingdom of Numenor, to the furthest reaches of the map. These kingdoms and characters will carve out legacies that live on long after they are gone. So then we discussed, what does this mean? Obviously, it's metaphorically carving out legacies, but could it also mean literally because of some of the ruins that are left behind? Then we moved on from this discussion to a new point, which was further thoughts on Project Northmoor, about Tolkien's home in Oxford, and Chris had mentioned some more things on that. I'm racking my brain to remember what the further thoughts were.
Further thoughts?
Yeah, do you remember what they were?
Onward and upward. No. They have a short time frame in which to raise the amount of money that is necessary.
Yes.
For the project.
Right.
Which one?
Project Northmoor.
Project.
And it's not officially endorsed by the Tolkien estate, right?
It's not
officially
endorsed at all.
But it's
Yeah. They're on their own. I think what they're waiting for would be for some pretty important
beefy
scholars to weigh in.
Donors, yeah.
Donors, but also, I mean,
Yeah.
people right now we have movie stars essentially who are saying we support this, but what about people like
Right.
Verlin Flieger? What about people like Tom Shippey? What about
And they're
What
all
about Tolkien's
silent
family?
on
Let's
that
write in
matter.
family.
Tolkien's family?
And I wonder if it's because of the person involved, or not.
Yeah,
I
hard to
don't-
tell.
Because this person, this literary scholar who's fronting the whole thing is not pro Tolkien, nor is she against Tolkien.
So then, what other agenda is there?
Right.
Yeah,
It's
that's
not-
weird.
Yeah.
So yeah, we don't know. It's
But she's been able to convince
Yeah,
some
we
actors
discussed it
to.
at length in last
we did.
month's.
Yeah.
We did. Yep. So
Yep.
yep. Then we all read Tolkien's letter 181.
Yes.
And we read only part of it because it's a long one, so we'll need to finish that today. In that letter, j.r.r. Tolkien talks about fairy stories, not allegory, the quest, and 2 things going on with each character. I think he talked about subjective and objective. I'm not sure now, but it basically had to do with what's going on in Frodo, on the outside and on the inside.
So it was to Michael Straight drafts, probably January, February 1956, thanking him for the letter. It's a fairy story. Adults or mentally adult people. Relevance to human situations. Mechanically, morally, and psychologically credible. Humanly speaking. The quest was bound to fail as a piece of world plan. Also bound to end in disasters. The story of humble Frodo's development to the noble is
I think
sanctification.
that might be it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's about where
234, I think.
Yeah. And then, much to digest, we stopped at the end of the paragraph ending with, after that, he was lost. So the next meeting was to be February 20, 2021.
And here we are.
And here we are. And the agenda is to finish letter 181 and discuss Tolkien Moot. And also, we need to add a request from Sarah Zama to ask some advice about the Silmarillion and summarizing this. So we'll give her a chance to do that pretty soon here.
And your friend from down under, the other down under,
Which is down under.
South Africa.
Okay, what about them?
Oh. Then maybe I'm not thinking. Right.
No, sorry.
Okay.
But we also
What
want
are you
to.
talking about, Chris?
Well, we're in several different worlds. We've got
Yes.
lots of things going on that he and I are
Worlds and
involved in.
not worlds.
But we do want to make sure to also talk
Yes.
about the Kickstarter.
That too.
Yes. And?
Tolkien Moot registration RSVP is now up and running.
Right. Okay, so let's take each of these in point of order. Do you have any preference about which we cover first? Can we do Sarah first?
You're Mr. Secretary. You get to call order what you want.
Okay, all right. So let me just put in here. Okay, so let's go ahead and invite Sarah. You actually pronounce it Sarah, is that correct? Sarah?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sarah Zama, of course, you may remember from Tolkien Moot last year.
And the last few meetings.
And the last
We're
few
really
meetings as well.
To have her joining us.
So she was on our panel discussing the rise of Numenor, and of course now a frequent guest. So, Sarah, could you please discuss a little bit about what you told me about your project right now?
Yes. So I'm preparing some video for a course about Tolkien, held by the Accademia Online di Biblioterapia. And they asked me for a few videos, no longer than 15 minutes. And one of these videos will be about the Silmarillion. And it is driving me crazy because I have no idea how to summarize the Silmarillion in 15 minutes. I've tried many different things and I don't know.
Because it covers a lot of different areas.
Yeah.
It's hard to summarize without
I don't know
retelling
what
it.
to put in, I don't know what's left out. I don't know. So I was just hoping for some. For example, what you think it must be there, and what it is that it can be.
Must have the Ainu Lindale, the creation of the world and universe by music, the song of creation. It permeates all, and it's often overlooked by people, but it's a foundational part of the fabric of his mythology.
You can't
that a lot
skip
of people
it.
leave out.
Sure.
And why music is in so many different parts of his writings. The whole creation started with music in his. So that's one, and I am a musician. What's that?
This is for readers who are not fans. So this is for readers that want to know something about Tolkien but don't know anything.
Okay.
Ah.
So
I have an idea.
yeah.
Yeah, Anthony, go ahead.
Well, I was thinking in the second edition of the Silmarillion, Christopher Tolkien included a letter written by his father to Milton Waldman, who is an editor or publisher at HarperCollins Publishers, written in like 1951. And Tolkien basically summarizes his own work, the Silmarillion, as well as parts of The Lord of the Rings. So you could use that as a guide. And I think Milton Waldman wasn't, obviously didn't, never really read Tolkien's works. So Tolkien himself was summarizing his own creation to a guy who wasn't really familiar with it. So yeah, just look up the second edition of the Silmarillion, and one of the what's included
Yeah,
is
I know, but it should be. I think it should be. Uh, it's not just a summary of the story, which I'm not really sure how to.
So it needs to be in the style of Amazon summary, right?
Yeah, not Tolkien's summary of his own work.
It needs to be Amazon
But
summary.
I think Anthony's getting at the fact
Yeah.
that Tolkien
Yeah.
himself would have basically tried to state what he felt were some of the major themes.
yeah.
And then you can put that in your own words.
So use that as the skeleton. Just take off all of the extra bits.
all of the niggling.
Yes.
Yeah.
And maybe use that. I would say as well.
Find a keyword or sentence from each paragraph.
Yeah.
Find just one keyword or sentence,
That-
and then that will help you trim that way down.
Yeah, without plagiarizing it.
Yeah, and then you can
Yeah.
connect that together into your own.
I wonder if anybody's ever done a word cloud on the Silmarillion.
What's a word cloud?
A word cloud?
I can actually show you because it's in my PBS webinar
Is it?
presentation. Yeah, several of them.
Because, it's like it takes the word count, and the words that are repeated most often are larger, and it's a cloud of words.
Oh, okay.
Have you seen that before, Sarah?
Yeah, I've seen word clouds, but never.
Oh, that's a
never
word cloud.
about-
Okay.
Yeah.
So it includes like the
So this
list.
is one for recreation therapy and gaming.
Right.
So it includes like the most common words. As
Yes.
Right, the more that's not gonna.
Yeah.
But yeah, just look up word cloud. There's tools online to generate them, and you just put in a list of words, and if the words are mentioned more, they get larger. You can change the algorithms on it, but
Yeah.
and you can create it in different shapes and invert the shapes, and so I've got a lot of different ones for our
What about,
presentation.
let's think about this. So some of the themes that we would just, if we were to discuss this with somebody maybe who didn't, somebody who was attending our meeting, I've never read anything by Tolkien at all, or maybe I've read The Lord of the Rings or watched the movies. Let's just say they've watched the movies, they have no other background on it. I mean, is that kind of what you're talking about, Sarah? Like people who have maybe some cultural references to Tolkien that they've heard about in the movies, but not anything else?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so
That's my problem because only using the names in the Silmarillion will be totally new to them.
Yeah.
So
World was created with music and song.
Yeah.
I think you have to really be careful. Go ahead. Yeah.
The the deities that helped create it took form and joined that world.
Are they deities though? They're kind of semi.
All right. Enough niggling.
The gods in you gotta think people who don't know where else you think like Greek
Yeah.
mythology.
Yeah, it's,
Right?
it's similar.
They're
Give them a
gonna be
reference
very
point.
similar to those.
Yeah.
Took form in grandiose form, and warred across the lands, reshaping the world in their wars, till they didn't, because they, and then finally mortals, started to come to be. You could just boom, 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 boom. Yeah.
But that makes it sound like two basically balanced, equal sides duking it out in a Ragnarok or something. And I think really we've got one bad actor, and everyone else is on the same page. So it's really about.
But for beginners, yeah.
For the
'Cause
start,
there
yes.
were
that we can't.
the
We
start.
can't. Yeah,
Yeah,
we've got to
but
keep
not
it
like-
basic, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Hawk's points are good. I think what do we see? What is like when you think about why the Silmarillion?
Words have power, names have power.
Yes, and I think a major theme is about how oaths should not be lightly taken. You don't promise something without understanding fully what that might entail you to do, and kind of the role of conscience versus loyalty. I mean, I think that's a big one because you've got because Feanor, I think, is one that you should mention because he looms large, I think, there.
Creative genius, temptation, downfall,
Pride.
greed, pride. Yeah,
Pride.
Yeah.
But I would avoid lots of the Elvish names because
Yeah,
most
the
of them
names are just too
most of
much,
them
yeah.
start with F, and I think most beginners are going to be completely
completely
confused
confusing.
by Fingolfin,
Yeah.
Finarfin,
Finway.
Finway.
I still.
I
Finduilas.
started talking about the music of j.r.r. because I think it's very important.
Yep.
Then I tried to just talk about the Silmarillion, and then I was 20 minutes already.
Yeah, from that point. So,
How long have you set, like, how many words? What's the word count this has to be?
it's a video.
So,
I wrote like a script of about I think it should be 700 words. But I tried to read it, but it doesn't work.
Well, maybe at some point we take some time and you go through and we help you. I mean, is it in English?
No, it's in Italian.
Oh, okay. Well,
What is the deadline, Sarah? When do you have to have this finished by?
It should be the end of the month, but I have some flexibility on it because.
Well, let's just give her a few ideas, and then we'll see if anything else comes to us after the meeting.
yeah. And the theme of music, though, isn't just the beginning. The Song of Arda is throughout all of the stories. It's one of the connecting pieces throughout everything. And with the elves tapping into it, even the hobbits tap into music in their own way, right? In their tavern song way and such, and traveling, and the road goes ever on, and music, and the dwarves and all of them. Music is woven throughout.
What you think? I just talk about the music.
If you pick a theme, you could totally do that.
And the destiny and everything.
Yeah.
Or light and darkness too.
That is the problem. Silmarillion has many themes, right? So you could focus on any one theme and have a complete summary, and it wouldn't be wrong. It would just cover that portion of the Silmarillion, that whole theme, and then you could pick another theme. So, like, I did a paper on Tolkien and his love of trees, and it went all the way through the Silmarillion and all his other books, not just Middle Earth, but a lot of his other books as well, about trees. And I just focused on trees. There are many other things to talk about with Tolkien besides trees, but I had to pick it just to narrow it down. I had to pick something. And then I've written others on other topics. So that might be what you want to do, is just pick one of the many themes and then just focus on where that progresses through. That would at least narrow it down for you.
Oops. So it's interesting when I looked up the word cloud that some of it is very predictable.
Kings, the history of kings. I saw
Very-
a lot of big capital king.
Very predictable, but
land.
But
Time.
But time is an interesting one.
Yeah.
And of course,
mortality, right? Mortality is a huge theme.
Will.
one theme that you see is consistent through also the Lord of the Rings, not just the Silmarillion, because they are such different works, is the difference between the will to power and dominate versus freedom.
Yeah, temptation. Temptation throughout all of it, and those who gave into it and those who resisted. Very few resisted. The Druidine,
Yeah.
Sam.
So, is there anything else we'd like to suggest or share with? And then again, maybe some of us can just put it on the email for Sarah later if you think of it.
Does that help though, as far as just throwing some of those out there for you?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the ocean as well. I have to say, water.
Yes, the
water.
sea, the calling of the sea.
The water
all
always
time.
is a very big theme. Yeah.
You can also draw a parallel between the Silmarillion and the Bible, especially the Christian Bible, about
Sure.
creation and the fall of man and
Sure.
the original
Yeah,
sin.
there's
Because Tolkien was a
books
devout
on
Catholic.
that.
How many
Yeah,
Italians
allegory.
still know who Dante is?
Oh yeah, you could parallel Dante's Inferno.
Dante. Well,
Dante
not just
Alighieri.
Inferno. He wrote other things as well.
Yeah.
We never know it because we studied in our school.
This is like your Shakespeare, right?
Yeah, Dante's like Shakespeare. And
So you could make parallels between the Silmarillion and Dante's works.
I was just thinking of how I would say to an English audience that in this story, there are many stories, much like, and you have to think of like, what would example, like a necklace with many pearls, you know? And one of these is the greatest love story ever told. Better than Shakespeare, Romeo and Juliet. And I would say it's about these two people. I
Baron
mean,
and Luthien.
because you want to stay big and look at the whole thing, but I feel
Make
like
it personal.
if you could do just the one story to get them excited about this and want to read it for themselves, I would summarize Baron and Luthien as an example. The micro gives a taste of the macro. It even includes the Silmaril. It includes the theme of light and darkness.
And
what else?
Tolkien and his wife's tombstone say, "Here lies Baron and Luthien."
Yeah, fair.
So that puts a nice little tweak at the end.
You could, yes. And doesn't she sing as well? So when does Luthien
Well,
sing?
she was a piano player and everything. And
No, not Edith. I meant Luthien.
Oh, okay. Yeah, she sings.
So
in the,
she
in the veil
sings.
and all that,
She
yeah.
sings in the veil when. So there's Baron and her.
She sings Morgoth to sleep.
She sings Morgoth to sleep. Doesn't she also? Does she sing when she's Thuringwethil, when she's disguised as a vampire, to kind of lull Sauron as well, or?
with the dog or something. Like
Oh no.
that.
There's actually a
The
battle of
vampire.
singing, isn't
Yeah,
there, between
yeah.
Sauron or wills, a testing of wills, and then I think that's.
No, that was that was. Wasn't it? That was one of the.
Well, remember, because Baron was in his dungeon,
Yeah.
and Luthien came to rescue him. Anyway, that's up to you, Sarah. Just we're having a nice debate.
There's a lot. So probably you can say is the Silmarillion has many different stories, and you could focus on many different threads. For this summary, you're going to focus on this thread, whatever it is, and just make it clear that there's a lot of different ways, but I'm going to focus for this time on this thread. That's the only way you're going to get it under control. And pick one thread that you can go through the arc, and do make some part of it personal. Take it from, because most of the Silmarillion is really big and grand in scope, but the parts that everybody remembers and loves the most, except for me on the music side, is when it comes into one or two or three people. That's when people connect the most. So it's got this grand scope, but give it some personal connection. That makes it much more interesting to people. J. Michael Straczynski, the Babylon 5 and such, he always talked about it's great to have these epic adventures and battles and all that, but what people really care about is the relationships between the characters. That's where people feel a connection. So finding a thread that you think would make that connection for people who aren't Tolkien, who it would make them interested. Baron and Luthien is an easy one. The gray elf, Doriath and his wife.
Thingol and Melian.
Yeah, Thingol and Melian. That's a whole story there. Galadriel and all of her tragedy, and right, and all of the Galadriel arc, right?
Dude,
Galadriel covers a huge part.
Galadriel does, and that might be a tie-in for people who know the movies. For example, Feanor asks Galadriel for one strand of her hair, and she refuses. Gimli asks for three, and she
gives it.
Yeah,
That's a big deal. So, does that help?
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of ideas, but yeah.
Excellent. Wonderful.
Okay.
You should share after you do the work and stuff. Consider sharing it with Other Minds magazine with Thomas out of Germany, because we've been getting multilingual translations of our magazines in many languages.
Yeah, we should.
Are you familiar with Other Minds magazine?
Oh.
It's
I think I am from you, but
yeah, it's otherminds.net. So it's mostly Tolkien gaming, but we put in literary scholar stuff too. There's a lot of just world creation analysis in there that you don't have to be a gamer to appreciate. So it's otherminds.net, and Thomas Morwinski, who's in Germany, he's the one doing the editing and everything. And if you wanted to submit after you've gone through your paper and all that, but if you ever wanted to share that, we would love to have that in there. Even if it's in Italian, that's okay. We have people all around the world. It's multilinguistic. So wonderful. Yes, well, you're going about what?
Free League just
Over
emailed
1
out
million.
project update number 9.
Right.
It's the 25th stretch goal that they've just opened up.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It was funded in 4 minutes.
Yeah, and now they're over $1 million.
Shall we go to that next?
It's like the fourth greatest, best funded role playing game so far, and they still have 2 weeks left.
So, Hawk, well, since we're mentioning this already,
Before
go
we
ahead.
get into that, let me
Yeah,
just
yeah.
quickly pitch
Please do.
Tolkien Moot. So,
Take
Tolkien
time.
Moot is coming up. This is our annual convention of gaming and scholarly, discussion and enjoyment. Lots of games, etc. TolkienMoot.org is the website. The RSVP is now up as of this week. It is Saturday, July 17th, 2021. So we're back on our correct normal schedule, the third weekend of July. It's all day long. The doors open, in quotes, virtually and physically at 7:30 a.m. Pacific time, and they go till about 10:30 p.m. The Tolkien Society meeting takes place at the same time, 1 to 3, our normal slot, but we, of course, will hopefully have special guests and panelists, etc. This is part 2 in our Numenor series, the cycle, the Numenor cycle, part 2. And we didn't really get to play it last year, so we'll be picking that up this year to actually play it. So it's a little bit out of sync from where we wanted to be, from the Rise of Numenor, because the game will be the Rise of Numenor and the First Contacts and such. But our discussion is more about the
Golden
Zenith,
Age.
the Zenith and Golden Age.
Yeah.
So it'll be a little out of sync, but we can do 2 Tolkien Moots about that. I mean, there's a lot.
Well, it is, but I think also it's kind of the question of what is the rise. I think if you define it technically, by the time they are the gift bringers, they are at their golden age. Their golden age is when they are at their highest seafaring capability.
Yeah, and Tolkien, that's not when they first start, though, because Tolkien talks about when they first started reaching out, and then they kind of went away for a little while, right? They kind of did tentative exploration, and that was and they were just kind of exploring. Then they came back as gift bringers.
Yep.
And then they came back again as
Colonizers.
Colonizers, yes, taking the resources, dominating, etc.
Imperialism, yeah.
And that was technically what Tolkien said at their greatest was under R.r.
Well, greatest.
Greatest in force, not
Yes.
in their moral, ethical, whatever.
Right.
They were also their most corrupt by then.
True.
Was he the last king?
That's actually a
He
great.
was the last emperor.
This is actually a great point because it kind of what's the
Where
metric?
do you measure
What's
greatest?
the metric?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Is it by your?
If they were goodness, it was as gift bringers the second time. So
Yeah.
the first time they're just explorers, exploring the known unknown world.
Yep.
And then they went away for a while. They didn't take anything, but they didn't really give anything either. They just kind of made that for those first contacts.
Map makers.
When they come back and they start giving technology and knowledge to these people in the shadow of Sauron in fear for so long, from a ethical, moral goodness perspective, that's when they're at their greatest, right? They're driving back the darkness,
And
pushing it away,
it's
and helping all these others.
Isn't that what happened to the UK, to Great Britain, with
Yeah.
Rome? I mean, Rome
Brought the light of Rome
brought
into
the light,
England.
but
that was against
but it
their
was,
will.
But it was in waves. and
Right,
it
but that was
slowly-
against their will. That was more like them the third time where
No.
they forced it.
Let's make sure nothing negative against Italy right now.
Oh yeah.
This was 2,000 years ago.
Pax Romana and all that.
I think. Is it too soon? Is that what you're saying?
2,000 years too soon.
But yeah, they were not domineering. They weren't warlike. They
Yes.
came and they helped people. They brought technology and they drove back the creatures and monsters that terrorized everybody.
Yeah.
They weren't at their greatest military might,
Right.
but they were at their greatest goodness,
Yeah.
if you will.
Yes.
And they weren't, plowing down the trees and everything else yet.
Right.
The
So
standard
that's
ebb
one
and
way.
flow of a society. You
go through these phases,
there's
the
a
fall, rise and fall of empires. Yeah,
Yes.
300-year cycle.
And I really feel like at this golden age, one of the things that I'm most captivated by is how they are, if you will, it's kind of like when you're at the eye doctor and they say, okay, is this clear or that clear? And so you see when it's at most clear and very vivid,
It's a litophysics.
is where now their ability has risen to the point where they're able to give and help, but they haven't been so powerful long enough to become entitled.
Right, and they're not fearing they're not feeling their
Death.
mortality
Yes,
and all
yes.
that either.
Absolutely, you're right.
They're still in a very generous mode of they're grateful.
They're thankful. They're
Yeah,
grateful.
They're thankful,
and
grateful.
there's
the
this
land of gift.
there's this echo where they by being beneficent and being generous.
Pass it on.
It is. Pay it forward.
Pay it forward. Yeah.
And it's a lot like when you think about this. The elves, what was it that the elves did? You think about the three noble houses, right?
Can you hold that because I want to check culturally. Are
Yeah,
you
yeah, go.
familiar with the whole pay it forward concept?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure because some cultures.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, just wanted to make sure.
We have some odd sayings in English.
Okay, go ahead with the three.
Sorry, I had a frog in my throat just then. Okay. No, I think when we look back in the Silmarillion again, and we see when do elves notice men? When do elves notice humanity? And it's this beautiful picture of this fire, and these humans are, I think, around the fire. They just crossed over the Misty Mountains. Maybe it was the mountains of Beleriand, wasn't it? I think. And you had one of the elven kings. I think it was maybe Fingon. No, it's Finrod Felagund. He becomes the kind of the patron of these and helps them. He teaches them different things, and they are enlightened because of it. Yes, and he helps to raise their awareness and their culture. They learn to speak Elvish, and so you have the three noble houses of Hador and Haladin, and I'm forgetting the third one. We've talked about this before. What is it?
Three Houses of Men?
Yes, three houses of men.
Haleth.
The Edain.
Yeah.
Beor.
Beor, Hjor, and
Beor,
Haleth.
Hador.
yeah.
Hador, Beor,
yeah.
and Haleth.
Yeah. there you
Hador,
go.
Beor,
Oh,
Haleth.
and then somewhere, the Woses, the Druidine.
Oh.
Yes.
I'm not really clear.
I think the interaction, the first contact, as it were, was with Hador, I think, or maybe it was Beor, but one of the two. And anyway, and so the elves kind of see them. They don't necessarily pity them, but they're interested in them, and they think, we have so much to offer.
They're generous of spirit.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
And the elves teach men a lot of things like
They do.
music and
Yes,
crafts and stuff like
or
that.
or
right?
to use a later example, the Entwives.
Yeah.
The Entwives actually taught men as well and gave them understanding of agriculture. So we have all these different kind of patterns, and then the Numenorians also then kind of
Equally generous.
they had an opportunity to do that. So yeah, that's our focus. So what else about Tolkien would you like to say, Hawk?
So it will once again be a single day rather than our old 3-day, 5-day marathons. We're not quite up until we have the warehouse space or something from, we're trying to get this year for RPG Research. So I don't know if you know RPG Research, this year the goal is to raise $30,000 to get a warehouse facility for RPG Research.
Yes.
Which then provides all the stuff downstairs moves to the warehouse. So we're not, because this is 1,750 square feet and packed to the gills.
Yeah.
And then I got another 1,750 upstairs, but
Yeah.
So much of this would move to the warehouse, and we would have the museum, we would have our offices, and we would have all of this there, and it would give us the space we need. And it means Tolkien Moot once again could go back to 3 days because we'd have a facility again where we could host for 3 days all the different stuff. So that's the big goal for RPG Research this year, is to raise 30 grand for 1 year's worth of rent for a 2,000 to 4,000 square foot warehouse. If we get that, that means not this year, but next Tolkien Moot, we might be able to finally do a 2 or 3 day one again, which would be wonderful.
So I'm working at Hawk's behest to form another panel, and I'm going to invite Francesco Nepatello and see if he responds. He, of course, is the designer of the One Ring role-playing system.
Mm-hmm. And he's out of Italy.
So,
do you know Francesco Nepatello?
The name is Italian.
Yep. So he's the one who made the One Ring role-playing game, designed it, most of it. And they're now on their second edition. This is a great
he's got a
segue.
studio in Venice where he's working, and so we'll talk about that in just a minute, what they're doing lately.
Yeah.
But we do know for sure, I wanted to see if Sean could come back from the Prancing Pony podcast, and his partner, Alan Sisto, who they have the Prancing Pony podcast, and it'd be nice to pull that in. So trying every year to bring in some new people.
That'd be great.
So we'll see what happens with that. That should be good.
And the way it works is the first part of the morning is the opening ceremony, then the games. We do Tolkien based games, And then from the 1 to 3 slot, we do this, but with the special panelists and guests on whatever that topic is. And then go back, we have breaks in between and dinner and all that and lunch, but more games until 10 o'clock at night. And it's all Tolkien based. And it's in theme with the discussion. So it's a Numenor based role-playing game adventure campaign.
Yeah.
3 or 4 sessions.
But wasn't that canceled last year though?
Right, so we're going to play what we didn't cancel the moot, we canceled
Right.
the gaming.
Yeah.
Because Gen Conning burned out all our people. We're not doing that this year. So we'll be able to focus our energy on Tolkien Moot this year. And so that will be the Numenor Gift Bringers first contacts adventures that we missed last year. And really there's enough material there that could go on a few moots, but and everybody will be playing the same adventures, even though they're in different rooms and gaming different systems. And it is possible to play it remotely. And a lot of people are remote. Like right now we have games being played remotely in the other studios right now. So if it's something you ever wanted to try, you would be welcome to do so. And you don't have to do the whole day. They're in 3 to 4 hour slots. So you just join for 1 or 2 slots, whichever ones you are comfortable with, and have some fun. So, and it's free and open to everybody. You just make sure you RSVP, that's the key. And that's at tolkienmoot.org. So there's that.
Good. Thank you, Hawk. Did anyone else have any new things that you wanted to mention before we
Well,
get into Kickstarter?
And if all goes well, we might be debuting the 2nd edition of the One Ring Role Playing game because we might have the early PDFs or something of
Ooh,
it.
that'd be
Nice segue. So the announcement is that the One Ring role-playing system, way back in 2011, I think it was, when Sophisticated Games, which had the license for, we won't go into the deep history, but there's a lot of history about role-playing games having a license for the Lord of the Ring, for Middle Earth.
That's a discussion for another time.
Another time.
Yeah.
But they had the newest, the license, the current only license for role-playing. And so they then
They're doing
contracted
5-year increments.
5-year increments, and they contracted with Cubicle 7
Cubicle 7 to be the publisher.
to be the publisher. So that's what they did for 5 years, and then partway into their second,
2 years into the second cycle. And
there was a
released
creative-
AIM, and then they had creative differences.
yes, because of creative differences, they parted ways, and so the new publisher that Sophisticated Games has brought on board is Free League Publishing from Sweden, I
Right.
believe.
The One Ring, or Cubicle 7 was UK based.
Yes.
Free League is Swedish based.
And I think even the Cubicle 7 is now moved to Ireland, I believe.
Oh, because of the better tax.
Republic of Ireland, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but here's a very interesting point, and that is that Francesco
Still,
has moved with the new. He is definitely still just as involved.
he's emailing in these updates explaining the new rules.
Yes,
variations,
that's
so.
great. So I'm
It's
excited.
a little more D&D-esque, or you could
Maybe.
say D&D is a little more it-esque, as
Maybe.
he points out.
Yeah.
He's like, well, we kind of already had that before 5th edition existed. Like, well, kind of. They come from the same roots with Pendragon and stuff. So.
Right.
But we're excited about that.
It'll be great because the second edition should have it much better organized. That's always been a
I
problem.
hope so. Oh, I hope so. That's been the biggest problem.
When's it supposed to come out?
In November is when it's actually supposed
The
to be published.
hardbound, but we'll have early PDFs
By
potentially in time
June?
for Tolkien Moot, potentially.
Yeah.
July.
So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
but potentially. These things you never know, but potentially. And so we would be trying to run that.
It should be possible because to be honest, the second edition was already
Already
90% done
Yeah.
before things changed. But to bring it back to Tolkien, one of the reasons why this particular system I like it so much is because many people have said if you look at it totally aside from how it works as a system, just the feel of it.
Yeah, they've done a good job. With
It preserves the feel,
Yeah.
the atmosphere of Middle Earth. One of the
Beautifully.
best. Yeah, very beautiful.
Yeah, and I love the fellowship focus and all of that, where it really encourages that camaraderie in a beautiful way very quickly. Our research side, we call it behavior guidance rules, but it really builds that empathy and connection and camaraderie with people much better than a lot of other games.
How does that compare to Adventures in Middle Earth?
That is they've stripped out some of the Tor rules to make it work on 5th edition D&D.
Oh, okay.
AIM is D&D 5th edition with Tor bolted on,
Oh, interesting.
and only portions of Tor bolted on. So they get all the characters and the races and all that from Tor, but it's mostly D&D 5th edition rules. That's Adventures in Middle Earth. That's AIM.
More appealing
And
to
they
some
left
people.
out Fellowship Focus and Hope Points. They only have inspiration. It's a watered down version of Tor.
Oh, okay.
So if you like AIM, if you're okay with learning another system, Tor is wonderful. It's much richer in
Yeah, I
role
played with
play
it, Brian. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
than AIM. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's much more character and story driven.
Yes.
So combat serves a purpose, but it's definitely more about
Your group
discovering
interactions
and all that.
Yeah.
So
It's beautiful.
and so what they did is they actually made a Kickstarter project and
They needed $12,080, right? That was to fund it. 4 minutes it was funded. In 4 minutes. It is now, with still 11 days to go, over $1 million $91,328 raised. They still have 11 days to go.
Wow.
So right now it's the fourth grade, as far as role-playing games raising money in Kickstarter, it's the fourth best so far, and it still has 11 days to go.
Wow. So at this point, I mean, kudos to them. So glad it does show what a groundswell of support there is. These aren't just people on the fringe who happen to be.
Well, it's only 8,783 backers.
Oh.
Yeah. So they're putting down some big wads of cash.
Yeah, they are.
Well, I wonder how many are retailers because of the retailer
Oh.
thing. Because that's actually not that many backers.
Okay.
That's only slightly more than Zoe's numbers. Like Zombie Orphans.
So it's still kind of specialized in
but
some ways.
they're putting down a lot more money. And I
Yeah.
mean, I have 2 accounts, and I did one as RPG LLC as a retailer. So I got 5 copies of the regular rulebook and 5 copies of the basic set, just right up front, and that's a few $100s, right? And then I've got my personal account where I'm getting the special, my precious version, and that stuff, that bundle. So I'm doing both. So that's that's more than half a grand right there.
Yeah.
That's more than your typical. Most Kickstarters people do about $20 or so.
Can you just briefly tell us how you feel this is moving away from how Kickstarter began?
Yeah, because of my comments. Kickstarter's main benefit was it for people who weren't publishers and game companies and such, and they needed a little bit of extra money so they could get a product across the finish line and get it out to people. It was supposed to help the little guy.
Yeah, startup.
It was
capital.
not supposed to be startup capital for existing established companies.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, in recent years, Kickstarter has increasingly been swamped by companies using this as a way to save on their startup costs for a new product and reduce their risk of investment on trying a new product. And people are spending the money, so
And Kickstarter doesn't care because they're making
doesn't
the
matter. It's the same
kickback on
model,
that.
Yeah.
but it's unfortunate because it drowns out a lot of
Yeah.
the other little guy stuff that was the whole point.
It's,
And why there's so much diversity in gaming now is a big part of
so
Kickstarter.
so we need a fork between Kickstarter and Kickstarter Classic.
Well, there are others out there like Gumroad and the others.
Yeah.
There are others out there, but they
Yeah.
just haven't quite gotten the traction. What's interesting is if you look at the numbers, in 2008, the tabletop gaming industry in the U.S. was about, and it might have been global. I'm a little fuzzy on this, whether it's global or U.S., because they're a big driver, right? You look at the U.S. market for tabletop games, it's like 80%. So these numbers are almost a global number. In 2008, tabletop games were only about $300 million in revenue.
Dollars.
Yeah, and $300 million in revenue. Role-playing games were only about $20 million
Yeah,
back in 2008. Then the market economy crashed globally. A lot of people were out of money. Video games became very expensive. You know, you had to upgrade hardware. You had to have internet connection. You had to get DLCs. It got really expensive, even on the mobile devices. And you saw video games were at about 17 billion at the time. They dropped to 15 billion. over a few years. But the tabletop gaming, because it was cheap, you could 20, 40, 50, 60 bucks, and you could play every Monday.
Yep.
Right? People were out of work, family,
Yep.
home evening, whatever, came back, things like that. And so by 2016, let me bring it all the way up to just last year, the tabletop gaming market is over $1.6 billion now. And role-playing games are around 60, 70, 80 million. So a four or five-fold increase in about 12 years. It's been double-digit growth year after year after year. Now, video games just the last 2-3 years have started to recover and they're back up again. But until 2016, they were down.
And that's going to continue as
and Kickstarter was
Yeah.
key to
Sure.
both the board games, card
Sure,
games,
sure.
and
Yeah.
role-playing games.
Yeah.
If you look at the slice of the market it came from, a lot of them came
Yeah.
from Kickstarter.
it's
It's the new renaissance of that game.
and it's going to continue as
Yeah.
people lose interest in the media.
Yeah. So Tolkien related, we've seen quite a few items come out of Kickstarter that are Tolkien related. The tricky thing is licensing. A
Yes.
lot of Kickstarters that
But
tried to
with
start
that
up got
type
shut
of
down.
money,
But this one was licensed.
yep.
So-
With that type of money, you even
The-
any smart
there-
lawyer would allow license.
Well, we'll see. A lot of times with that
Yeah.
type of money is when all of a sudden the vultures come in and freeze things. That's what happened to The Hobbit.
Well,
the movies?
but
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
They got
But
stuck
then
for
you
several
get
years
the
in
collection
litigation.
of game stores saying, "Hey, no, we
We'll
want
see.
this," and
We'll see. Oh, just one.
and all, that's all it takes
Yeah.
is that type
So
of thing.
I'm curious. Obviously, not all Tolkien fans are role-playing fans, but
Right.
I'm curious, Sarah, what your have you ever had any interaction with role-playing? I know that there are things that are in Italy that are similar to our Comic-Cons, like in Lucca. I think they have a big kind of deal that people get together for gaming and other things. But what is your experience over there?
Yeah, I've been to Luca Comics a lot of times.
Is it pronounced Lucca?
Luca.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's becoming very big, very big. I was there last year and it was impossible to walk in the streets because it was not last year, the year before,
Oh yeah.
of course. And it was so crowded that you couldn't walk in the street. But it's fine because you see lots of people in costume. They go to the role playing show. There is a show about the role playing, and then you see them walking around, and it's nice.
Oh, LARPing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Well,
Nice.
just cosplay.
Yeah, sure,
A lot
sure.
of cosplay. Not that much LARP, but lots of
Yeah,
cosplay.
yeah.
Yeah. The beauty of the reason why we even bring up role-playing gaming in our Tolkien Society is because of the other hands and minds quote from Tolkien, that others will take and build and fill out the details of the world, and role-playing gaming really allows filling in all those little details, right? Because you run into practical issues of having to figure these things out in great detail to play the game. So that ends up feeding back into, well, what if this and what if that? And it really helps fill out the world and bring it to life. That's why we do. We try not to spend too much time on the role-playing game side. But that's what's going on the role-playing game side.
Good stuff. Can I just put in a plug for
Please.
the most recent copy of the Malorn magazine?
You've been there, haven't you?
I have, yeah.
Eagle and Child.
The Eagle and Child pub.
Oh, you've been there?
One
Oh,
of
yeah.
these years. One of these years.
Brian's been there.
It's very small. It's a great little place. You walk in through the door. Immediately on your left, there is what's called a snug, which is like a very small little table. If you were at maybe a diner, thank you. And it was kind of like a little alcove where you could sit around a table, kind of on two sides or three sides of a table. That's on your left. You go straight through and this little hallway, and then on the right will be the bar, and then to your left is a little room, which is actually the rabbit room. And this is where
What's the rabbit room? What is
the rabbit room.
significance
I
of
don't know
that?
why it's called this, but this is where Tolkien and Lewis and their friends would always gather together. There's a fireplace there, but most of the people, the patrons that come for a drink, there's like a along the wall you have a counter that people are just, they pull up chairs and they sit there. There's a few tables in the middle of the room. It's not very large, and then kind of to the left corner you see this fireplace against the wall, kind of forward and to the left, and above the fireplace, which I don't think they ever had, working, but above it they have a framed picture of all the signatures of it's j.r.r. Tolkien, it's his son Christopher, it's C.S. Lewis, it's I think it was from 1946 or 47 when the Inklings would all meet together in this pub. So that's what that is. Yeah, and then also, if I just wanted to mention, there's an article in here that's quite good. I don't like all of them, but this one is called Tolkien's Fantasy Landscape, and it's about a painting of his, which is here. This is one he painted in 1911 after a trip to Switzerland.
Oh yeah.
And the mountains of Switzerland. This is actually quite close to northern Italy. And it's very beautiful, and it's showing an eclipse, so you can see his kind of style. Also a covered bridge, which are not common at all in England. Are you looking for a picture of the inside?
No, I was trying to find just something to put for our background. and
Oh,
stuff,
yeah.
So.
Yeah, so but I will hold this up for you. You can kind of see it a little bit there, Sarah. See if I can.
And if you see that camera, that's what she's seeing.
Oh yeah.
So what you see behind me is what she's seeing.
Here.
Yeah, yeah.
That way, tip it.
Yep. So very interesting. You can see back there the sun, which is in eclipse. The mountains. Some of the mountains are pink, so it's like the alpenglow when after the sun, it's kind of like when the sun is obscured, then there's still this kind of rosy look to the mountains. And it's very much, you can kind of see some of his illustrations later on for the Silmarillion and the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit.
Yeah, I think the eagle and child is colloquially referred to as the bird and the baby.
The bird and the baby, that's right.
I think that's what Rainer Unwin said.
Yes. Interesting connection with the pelican of
Yes.
American Solidarity Party,
Yes.
because of the medieval myth about the pelican plucking blood from her breast to feed her children. And
Bumble, bumble, bumble. That's not very considerate.
sorry. It was an aside.
Okay. Leave her out of the conversation.
No, not at all. It was an extraneous and
Okay.
not super
All right.
relevant comment to the whole group.
Okay. Sorry to give you grief about it. Okay. So, what else we got?
So I think that's mostly it. So we can maybe read the rest of letter 181, unless somebody else had another discussion to make.
I checked into Project Broadmoor, and there are no updates. No relevant news since then. So the question is, have they flopped or what? I don't know.
Okay.
There's also nothing on Lord of the Rings Prime, but there's the usual kind of chatter out there. So Amazon's upcoming Lord of the Rings show could end up being the most expensive TV show ever. And Elijah Wood, who played Frodo Baggins, said, "I find it very bizarre that they're calling it Lord of the Rings as a shorthand, because it's not Lord of the Rings. It takes place in the Second Age of Middle-earth." But obviously they want to keep the same
Cash
audience.
in on the branding.
So
It's
are
all
they
about
just going to call it
brand
Lord of the Rings?
recognition.
They should call it something else. I mean, it is technically still
Stories of
relevant
Middle-earth or
because it
something
is
like that.
still about the Lord of the Rings, and
That's true.
this is how the
That's
rings
true.
are made
That's true.
Yeah.
in the Second Age. But
That's true.
it's not really meant to
The
refer to
making
that.
of the rings or the history of the rings or something like that would be
Well, or even you could use, I know this is a little bit academic, but use the title that Tolkien does for the Second Age, at least for Numenor, right? What is the name?
Akalabeth, the downfall.
The Kalabeth, yeah.
Akalabeth.
Fall of Numenor.
That'd be a little hard to say, but you just
I
call
suppose
it the
so.
Fall of Numenor. But wouldn't the title Fall of Numenor kind of give the plot away?
Oh, spoilers!
Yeah, it'd be a spoiler.
Yeah.
Spoilers.
Actually, Tolkien thought that the title Return of the King gave the
Yeah,
plot. They gave the plot of that
yeah.
book. He wanted to call it The War of the Ring, but
Right.
the publishers wanted to call it The Return of the King.
Yes.
To refer to Aragorn.
Yeah.
So I think that's interesting.
I guess one thing I found is that the Amazon show is set to release sometime this year on Prime Video. And we still don't know who is going to play Sauron. And it's paralleled, coincidentally, by work on a massive multiplayer online role-playing game that will take place in Arda during the Second Age.
Oh,
What a
shocker.
surprise!
More Lotro, huh?
Big surprise.
Yes.
Merchandising.
Shower me with money.
The Schwartz.
Okay.
Yogurt.
So if we want to pull up
Okay.
Tolkien's letters, maybe.
All right. You had any other topics? Any other topics? Any other topics?
Well, I was reading an interesting article in Amon Hen, which is the latest.
Okay,
Yeah, go ahead.
great. No, exactly. This is the place to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much time we have left, but
Oh, we have time.
We have 43 minutes.
cool.
Feel free, Sarah, at any point if you need to
Yeah,
leave, we understand.
Generally, we should take a short break right about now. Just
True.
a short physical break. Get up, move around, stretch
do
your
you wanna do
legs,
that?
get that blood flowing, wake up your brains, get a drink.
Okay.
Just a quick 5-minute break,
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. All right.
and then we'll go into your topic.
Oh, it's okay.
And
Just
we're back on the air.
with
Welcome, welcome.
with the neighbor here.
All right, hope you feel nice and invigorated now that you've been up and moving around. Get that brain waking up. Okay, take it away.
Okay. So, so I recently became a member of the UK Tolkien Society.
Woohoo!
And,
Welcome.
this morning I just read my first issue of the Amon Hen newsletter, which they publish every month or so. Is that right?
Malorn's
every-
quarterly, right?
Yes. Hen every 2 months, I think, and
Yeah.
Malorn
2
quarterly.
months, okay. And there's some good stuff in the most recent issue, but the one article that really caught my eye was called "On the Origin of Hobbits," Part 1 by James P. Buckman, and kind of goes into the origin.
Sounds like a Hobbit name, Buckman.
Yeah, it does. Like Buckborough or
Yeah.
Buckland.
Buckland, yeah.
Yes.
And the article goes into really good detail about how we actually don't know that much about the origin of the hobbits, because even Tolkien himself, the article starts out by quoting the second chapter of the Fellowship of the Ring, in which Gandalf says, about their origins, at any rate, I know more than hobbits do themselves, but Tolkien does not share that knowledge, nor do any works within the Legendarium explicitly state how the race of hobbits came to be.
Before Third Age 1000.
Yeah,
from
and
the
I think,
East.
if I remember correctly, all that Tolkien really says was that they originated somehow like in the Vales of Anduin, the Great River.
Yeah, we did a whole Tolkien moot on this a few years ago.
Oh, really? Okay.
On the origins of the hobbits, all of them. We
Right.
did a whole adventure in that time period, and Katie was playing her time traveling hobbit, basically. And we did as much research.
But even that is...
It was scarce. It
yeah.
was scarce what we could
That's
find.
once they existed, but yeah, where did they come from?
Yeah, the proto hobbit concept.
Yeah, and kind of goes into the debate whether because there are 3 distinct like races of hobbits, right? There's the Stores, the Falahides, and the Harfoots, right?
Yep.
And it kind of goes into a debate whether they're kind of the same, whether they're related to each other, or whether they're kind of distinct subspecies of hobbit or whatever. And at the end of the article, it kind of offers a very interesting theory. Because like the at the beginning of the article, it said that Tolkien never went into great detail about where the hobbits came from, and Tolkien as an author kind of approached his works like he came upon them, as opposed to like
Discovered
being
right.
being like this omniscient creator. And it kind of relates to how he was a scholar of like Old English and Middle English texts and stuff, so he was kind of working with always incomplete historical documents and stuff, so he kind of treated his literary creation the same way, like it's almost like he came upon it,
Right.
as opposed to like creating it as an omniscient creator, like Iluvatar.
Book of West March, whatever.
And so, I don't know if I don't know if you guys want to look at this, but there's like a timeline of the races of Middle Earth, and I don't know if you want to pass it around, but it shows like throughout the ages how long each race lasted. You want to like zoom in and zoom out.
I don't know how well this will turn out, but let's see if I can get it at an angle that.
I don't know if you. Yeah,
It's just nothing but light.
Yeah. Oh well.
Like a Kindle?
It's an iPad.
Oh.
And it just jumped on me.
Yeah, I think the blue screen from the iPad it doesn't
Oh, yeah.
it just doesn't show up on a camera screen.
That's fine.
Probably.
Yeah,
But you guys can look at it.
Sorry, I lost the graph there. If you can pull that back up, it jumped on me. Sorry, it's in Amon.
Yeah, is Sarah a Tolkien Society member or?
Are you a Tolkien Society member?
Yes.
Okay, so it's in the latest issue.
Yeah, January 2021.
January,
All right.
2021 Amon issue.
Hobbits are
That much. You got all these, and hobbits are just a tiny little bit.
but wizards are about the same length.
Yes.
Hold on.
One thinks.
Well, the article does offer an interesting theory of the origin of the hobbits, which I'll get to
Okay, great.
in a sec. But it also goes into like kind of
Just sent it to you on WhatsApp.
kind of why Tolkien chose to choose hobbits as sort of the race to be the ring bearers, or specifically Frodo, as opposed to the other races of Middle Earth. He could have chosen somebody like Ents, for example, because Ents didn't really have that sort of temptation, because they were more focused on preserving their forests. They weren't really focused on the affairs of Middle Earth. But if you think about it, Ents are really tall and have shaggy beards, and it'd be hard for them to kind of cross the front lines of the gates of Mordor.
Unseen.
Yeah.
Watch the tree.
Yeah.
Nothing to see here.
And
And of course, the Eagles make it too easy.
yeah, yeah. the
Someone
Eagles
could
would
have
be-
died. Whee! Have you seen that? The
How the
cartoon?
Lord of the Rings should have ended.
How the Lord of the Rings should have ended.
I've
Have you
got
seen
an
that cartoon,
idea.
Sarah?
Sorry?
Have you seen that cartoon on video clip of how the Lord of the Rings should have ended?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, I'll send it
Check
to
it
you.
out. It's very funny.
Yes.
It's so funny. Sean Bean says, "One of us could have died."
It's Gandalf basically says, "I have an idea, and it just might work." And it's where you see the eagles basically carrying Frodo over the and Gandalf over Mount Doom,
Yeah,
and then Gandalf says, "Frodo, drop the ring," and it goes up.
And then Smeagol, Gollum comes out of nowhere,
Jumps on it.
skydiving. My precious!
Oops!
And they're flying away like, well, that was easy.
Yeah.
And Boromir and Sean Bean says, yeah, well, just think if we'd walked. One of us could have died.
Okay. Was there anything else that you want to share?
So going back to that graph I showed you guys, the article basically ends with, notice anything? 3,000 years of the Second Age pass without the emergence of any new race. Then the Entwives disappear, and 1,000 years later, hobbits emerge. And then the article ends with, my theory is straightforward. The Entwives were the foremothers of the race of hobbits, and the other three free peoples were their forefathers. Now, what do you guys think?
Whoa.
What do you guys think?
Wow. I'll have to read it to. I'll resume
The
judgment. till then.
hobbits do have their roots in the earth, after all.
I think that theory is just going a little far
You think
out
so?
on a limb.
Oh!
We have a dissenter.
Yeah.
Out on a limb. Yes, I see where you're
They
going
don't
with that.
seem tree-ish enough to me.
Well, they kind of have shaggy hair, don't they? At least in the movies.
Yeah, I don't use the movies as my reference points.
They are the
There
type.
lies madness.
They are the type that are not hasty.
No, don't be hasty.
It's true. I've not known many
Fond of
hasty
good
hobbits.
tilled earth.
Yes.
Drink deeply
Yes.
Yes.
of the draft.
Well, in Tolkien
They love
Moot,
their draft.
Tolkien Moot 14 or 13, it was the search for the Entwives.
Yes.
And there's a poem in there about the that I wrote about what the Entwives might have sung about, and it had to do with the love of the light of the sun, and how the light of the sun is like Laurelin, the golden tree from Valinor, and how just the love of growing things, and of course the Shire was tilled before the hobbits got there. So, well, thank you for sharing that, Anthony. We'll
Yeah,
have to have a
that's
closer look.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, you're welcome.
So I think we have time for, if we could just read the rest of letter 181.
We're good. Yeah, we got 25 minutes.
And we are on the paragraph that starts, there is no special reference to England in the Shire. This is on the second page of letter 181.
Nice segue from talking about hobbits.
Yeah.
In the Shire.
So Chris, would you be willing to read some for us?
There is no special reference to England in the Shire. That's a preposterous statement.
Because of course England is all made of shires. Right?
Except, of course, that as an Englishman brought up in an almost rural village of Warwickshire,
Warwickshire.
on the edge of the prosperous bourgeoisie of Birmingham, about the time of the Diamond Jubilee,
Here.
I take my models from like anyone else, from such life as I know, but there is no post-war reference. I am not a socialist in any sense, being averse to planning, as must be plain.
Even in sentence structures. All the asides.
Most of all because the planners, when they acquire power, become so bad. But I would not say that we had to suffer the malice of Sharkley and his ruffians here. Though the spirit of Isengard, if not Mordor, is
Of course.
of course always cropping up. The present design of destroying Oxford in order to accommodate motor cars is a case. But
Note.
Do you want to
but
read off this?
our chief advisory as a member of a Tory government. But you can apply it anywhere in these days. Yes, I think the victors can never enjoy victory, not in the terms that they are envisioned, as and in so far as they fought for something to be enjoyed by themselves. Whether acquisition or mere preservation, the less satisfactory will victory seem. But the departure of the ring bearers has quite another side as far as the three are concerned. There is, of course, a mythological structure behind this story. It is actually written first, and may now perhaps be in part published.
There's the Silmarillion for you, Sarah.
It is, I should say, a monotheistic but sub-creational mythology. There is no embodiment of the one of God, who indeed remains remote outside the world and only directly accessible to the Valar of the rulers. These take the place of gods,
Okay.
but are created spirits of those of the primary concern who by their own
Touche.
will have entered the world. But the one retains all or ultimate authority, and or so it
Seems.
seems, as viewed in serial time, reserves the right to intrude the finger of God into the story. That is, to produce realities which could not be deduced even from a complete knowledge of the previous past, but which, being real, become part of the effective past for all subsequent time. A possible definition of a miracle. According to the fable, elves and men were the first of these intrusions, made indeed while the story was still only a story and not realized. They were not therefore in any sense conceived or made by the gods, the Valar, and were called the
Erohini.
Erohini, or children of God, and were for the Valar or an incalculable element, that is, they were rational creatures of free will in regard to God, of the same historical rank of the Valar, though of far smaller spiritual and intellectual power and status.
I put in, so we got a footnote here that says, they shared in its making, but only on the same terms as we make a work of art or story. The realization of it, the gift to it of a created reality of the same grade as their own, was the act of the one God. And then also when he was talking about the roads there in Oxfordshire, a reference to the proposal for a relief road through Christchurch Meadow.
Oh, which is there now, I think. I've probably driven on it.
So that's what those were, those little
Dratted motor cars.
footnotes there.
Spoiling the countryside. You know, I was just thinking about what you often remind us of, Hawk, which is other minds in hands. Tolkien's quote. Really,
His crest has long since fallen.
yes. But I feel like in his own story, the Valar are doing that, aren't they?
Yep,
They're
that's
taking
exactly.
this song,
Derivative works.
they're
yep.
carrying it on, they're crafting and creating.
Or in jazz parlance, they're taking the melody and the riff and such and building on it and,
Yes.
and growing it and seeing where it goes.
It's really
and trying
beautiful.
out other-
I like that how even in his mythology he has that's being carried out.
Yeah.
You know, and so then we as sub-creators, right,
Yeah.
are to take and develop and come up with our own creative ideas. So anyway, sorry.
But he states that God has the ability
Yes.
to stick his finger in things
When he
and-
wants to.
But in that
metal.
section too, I thought that epitomizes the role-playing game experience.
Yes.
In the campaign setting.
Yes,
where,
indeed.
Oh,
It's to produce realities which could not be deduced even from a complete knowledge of the previous past, but which, being real, become part of the effective past for all subsequent time.
Wow.
A
Yes.
possible definition of miracle.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that's I think a key.
That's something worth unpacking later.
Yeah.
Okay.
C.S.
Let's come back to that.
C.S. Lewis's essay on miracles comes to mind.
Okay, Sarah, did you want to read, or shall we carry on with someone else?
It's fine, whatever you want to do.
Okay. Would you like to read?
Okay. Of course, in fact exterior to my story, elves and men are just different aspects of the humane, and represent the problem of death as seen by a finite but willing and self-conscious person. In this mythological world, the elves and men are in their incarnate forms kindred, but in the relation of their spirits to the world and time represent different experiments, each of which has its own natural trend and weakness. The elves represent, as it were, the artistic, aesthetic, and purely scientific aspects of the humane nature raised to a higher level than is actually seen in men. That is, they have a devoted love of the physical world and a desire to observe and understand it for its own sake and as other, such as a reality derived from God in the same degree as themselves, not as a material for use or as a power platform. They also possess a sub-creational or artistic faculty of great excellence. They are therefore immortal, not eternally, but to endure with and within the created world while its story lasts. When killed by the injury or destruction of their incarnate form, they do not escape from time, but remain in the world, either discarnate or being reborn. This becomes a great burden as the ages lengthen, especially in a world in which there is malice and destruction. I have left out the mythological form which malice or the fall of the angels takes in this fable. Mere change as such is not represented as evil. It is the unfolding of the story, and to refuse this is, of course, against the design of God. But the elvish weakness is, in these terms, naturally to regret the past and to become unwilling to face change, as if a man were to hate a very long book still going on and wish to settle down in a favorite chapter.
Yes.
Hence they fell in a measure to Sauron's deceits. They desired some power over things as they are, which is quite distinct from art, to make their particular will to preservation effective, to arrest change, and keep things always fresh and fair. The three rings were unsullied, because this object was in a limited way good. It included the healing of the real damages of malice, as well as the mere arrest of change. And the elves did not desire to dominate other wills, nor to usurp all the world to their particular pleasure. But with the downfall of power, their little efforts at preserving the past fell to bits. There was nothing more in Middle-earth for them but weariness. So Elrond and Galadriel depart. Gandalf is a special case. He was not the maker or original holder of the ring, but it was surrendered to him by Círdan to assist him in his task. Gandalf was returning, his labor and errand finished, to his home, the land of the Valar.
May I?
Please.
The passage over sea is not death. The mythology is elf-centered. According to it, there was at first an actual earthly paradise, home and realm of the Valar, as a physical part of the earth. There is no embodiment of the Creator anywhere in this story or mythology. Gandalf is a created person, though possibly a spirit that existed before in this physical world. His function as a wizard is an angelos, or messenger from the Valar or rulers, to assist the rational creatures of Middle-earth to resist Sauron, a power too great for them unaided. But since in the view of this tale and mythology, power, when it dominates or seeks to dominate other wills and minds, except by the assent of the reason, is evil. Okay, that's a very difficult sentence to understand. Hold on. Let me go back. But since in the view of this tale and mythology, power is evil, these wizards were incarnated in the life forms of Middle-earth and so suffered the pains both of mind and body. They were also for the same reason thus involved in the peril of the incarnate, the possibility of fall, of sin, if you will. The chief form this would take with them would be impatience, leading to the desire to force others to their own good ends, and so inevitably at last to mere desire to make their own wills effective by any means. To this evil Saruman succumbed. Gandalf did not. But the situation became so much the worse by the fall of Saruman that the good were obliged to greater effort and sacrifice. Thus Gandalf faced and suffered death, and came back or was sent back, as he says, with enhanced power. But though one may be in this reminded of the Gospels, it is not really the same thing at all. The incarnation of God is an infinitely greater thing than anything I would dare to write. Here I am only concerned with death as part of the nature, physical and spiritual, of man, and with hope without guarantees. That is why I regard the tale of Arwen and Aragorn as the most important of the appendices. It is part of the essential story and is only placed so because it could not be worked into the main narrative without destroying its structure, which is planned to be hobbitocentric, that is, primarily a study of the ennoblement or sanctification of the humble.
And that last sentence is powerful.
None of the drafts from which the text has been assembled was completed, so we don't know the end of the letter.
Primarily a study of the ennoblement or sanctification of the humble.
Yep. The great and the small. Council of Elrond, where Elrond says this amazing quote about how, I wonder if you have your copy handy nearby.
I have many copies, and maybe buried a little.
I know I can find it, I think, here, if I'm very careful.
No, this is just this 2 hit. It's to get your armor.
I can just take this out of the case, maybe. There we go. It's a Jenga tower of books.
That's
It's a
down
fancy
the hole
copy.
downstairs.
Right. But that's still less than.
It's at the end of the Council of Elrond.
So you are hit. So now I have to roll.
Ah, here it is. Gandalf is saying, into Sauron's heart the thought will not enter that any will refuse it, that having the ring we may seek to destroy it. If we seek this, we shall put him out of reckoning. And Elrond says, at least for a while, said Elrond, the road must be trod, but it will be very hard, and neither strength nor wisdom will carry us far upon it. This quest may be attempted by the weak with as much hope as the strong, yet such is oft the course of deeds that move the wheels of the world. Small hands do them, because they must, while the eyes of the great are elsewhere.
Great. So a lot to unpack between all of that.
Yeah.
Still about 10 minutes. Sarah, do you want to comment?
I think so, yes.
I was particularly interested in what you said about change, that the story is about change and how to handle it practically. Because I think it was something that he was experiencing in his time when, after the war, he went through the war that destroyed the world that he knew, and he was preparing to live in, and he had to live in a totally different world. And so he had to handle a very large change.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's because the Lord of the Rings is so relevant to us today, because we are going through a big change we too, and I think the book can help us to handle it.
Luckily, I have more.
Yes.
That's it is helping me in that regard.
Yeah, for sure.
Your thoughts?
Mere change is, as such, is not represented as evil.
Which is different than some other stories where often change itself is, you know, everybody sees change as an evil thing or a scary thing, etc. And even Tolkien himself, right, with the infernal combustion engine and
Yeah.
everything,
Yeah.
often has that same idea of wanting to kind of keep things in this idyllic way,
Or at least,
while the world keeps trying to move on.
or at least put the brakes. I'm even using in my own language mechanical symbols, but to put the brakes on the false myth of progress at any cost, right?
Yes.
But all change is good, and that's wrong.
Right. Either
And
extreme is
Either extreme, yeah.
a fallacy.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting too that he, in the intro to this letter to Michael Straight, he says, I guess this reviewer of the Lord of the Rings wanted to know a few things, and he was asking whether the Scouring the Shire chapter was directed especially to contemporary England, and why the other voyagers should depart from the Grey Havens with Frodo at the end of the book. Is it for the same reason that there are those who gain in the victory but cannot enjoy it? And I think that's a really powerful point, that often those of us who do good cannot be thinking of ourselves alone, but for others. For example, if you plant a tree in your yard, the people who will most enjoy this tree will not be you. It will be others, right? Mm-hmm. And also, if you've ever had a home with a beautiful large tree, that was planted by someone else before
yes.
you, and now you were enjoying the fruit of their labor.
I have about 20 of these trees on my property.
We're
40 years old, 50.
Yeah, I've got pictures of the field that was the property in 2002, and now there's all these glorious trees on my property. And
Yeah, you'd really notice it.
It is because someone planted them. Yes. And we are the recipients of that.
Any thoughts?
Kind of like to.
Please.
Also, in the introduction that Anthony mentioned to the Silmarillion, I was surprised to read that Tolkien kind of criticized the elves because they were trying to keep the world as it was.
Yes.
They were refusing change, while man could bring change to the world. That's how the two races can work together. Because the elves can keep what is good from the past, but the man can bring in the new that the elves are resistant.
Yes. Innovation.
Yep.
That's good. That's really good. Did you have a comment?
Yeah, I guess in the last part of the letter, I kind of liked the sentence that Hawk was talking about, the sanctification of the humble, and how, a small race of just little people, hobbits, were able to bring about great positive change in Middle Earth, and I think it kind of parallels the story of Jesus. Which, as Tolkien, as a devout Catholic, as we've talked about, was deeply interested in, and the incarnation and all that. Because Jesus was the son of, or at least, was born in a manger of a carpenter, was a carpenter's son. And so I think, I find that kind of theme very powerful. The kind of the little guy being sort of the I guess the savior of the world, or having a great impact on, because I think that's true of real history. It's not necessarily, there's Thomas Carlyle, who was a British author, and he kind of subscribed to this great man theory of history, where only people in high places were the ones who were making history, but there's also other historians
Very
like
often it is the ordinary.
yeah, like Howard Zinn, for example, who
Yes.
wrote a book called The People's History of the United States.
Really?
You know, he
From a psychology research side, what we've found a lot is the people who are more resilient are those who grew up in poverty
Yes.
and stressors and at-risk environments. They develop coping strategies, and they often may have some significant flaw of their own that they've had to learn to develop a compensatory action, and that gives them a drive and energy. Because if you're comfortable and everything's fine and you're just a happy baby in a puddle, you have no reason to modify, change, grow, change things.
yeah,
But when you have stressors promote
yeah,
change, and some of those changes can be for the better, sometimes they're for the bad. But
yeah.
and so people who go through that, they tend to lead to more resilient people
Yeah.
who are more adaptive and become more successful. And so despite decades of people saying, well, in these at-risk environments, they're more likely to fail, they're less likely to meet the same standards of success that they want for everybody else, but they actually have a better opportunity of rising above their current situation than those who were a little bit better taken care of.
Yeah.
Those stressors help them move beyond.
Yeah.
And
Do you think it's true of like Frodo?
look at how many people who've been great successes, or
Oh yeah, I got that.
that actually came from little or no education, or dropped out, or from poverty, etc., and went on to become billionaires, right?
An extraordinary success.
Extraordinary successes, exactly.
Yeah.
There's a lot of those stories, and there's some statistical data to validate why that is. Because, and I've met a lot of wealthy people because of my tech side with Barnes and Noble and Amazon and Microsoft and meeting these people, and these are very highly flawed individuals as far as they really have things they're trying to overcome in their character or other areas. A little overcompensatory, but it leads to these significant
Yeah, I think Tolkien himself kind of came from a humble background too, because he was orphaned from a very early age.
Yeah.
His father was a banker who died when he was 5, and his mother raised him and died of diabetes
he went
when he
through
was.
a lot of stressors.
Oh yeah, and he ended up being one of the world's most.
Countries.
And with his wife, with Edith, it was a forbidden Romeo and Juliet type situation. Forbidden,
Right.
forbidden
Yeah,
because he was
he
below.
lived through not
she was
one.
above his station.
He also lived through 2 world wars. And
Exactly.
Yeah.
trying to get his books published and going from being an obscure academic to being a best-selling author. It's
Which he had a lot of trouble coming to terms with.
yeah. So
So at this point, I just want to, as we're getting close to 3 o'clock, which is midnight in Italy, our next meeting will be March 20. Easy to remember that. And
My
yes.
son is in my head.
Oh, okay.
420.
So March 20 from 1
Oh,
o'clock.
no, that's April. Never mind.
oh yeah.
From 1 to 3 p.m. Pacific time. Thank you so much, Sarah, for joining us today.
Thank you so much. We're so glad to have
Always
you.
a pleasure.
Thank you.
We really enjoyed in having you here.
Grazie.
Prego.
Okay, so so same bat time, same bat place, same bat channel.
Yep.
So it's gonna be March 20th, 1 to 3 p.m. Pacific time. YouTube.com/Tolkien Scholars. Our website's TolkienScholars.org. If you want to RSVP for Tolkien Moot, that's TolkienMoot.org. We have both in-person and online games and panels and all of that. That's in July. And we'll be back again in a month. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, everybody.
Be well.
Thank
Namaste.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I'm out of here.